No family business person is taught how to run a business in an MBA school. In the early stages of an organization, the leaders, typically, or the founder leaders, tend to be much more hands-on. The senior generation tends to, have a challenge with delegation, of letting go of control. And of course, the younger generation, they are struggling to find their own, trying to lead the pack, so to say, because they tend to be really good individual contributors, but they tend to not like to work with teams. The next gen typically wants more freedom before they are ready for it. And my role is, how do I get them ready for it?
A statement that I've heard often, especially in the movies: the first generation builds, the second maintains, and the third destroys.
Okay, I'm the third generation in my business. Now I don't know how to answer, how to answer that.
Conflict is inevitable in multi-generational family businesses, where diverse perspectives and personal differences often clash. With only 3% of these businesses reaching the fourth generation, professional guidance becomes crucial for survival. An experienced family business coach can bridge gaps, align family and business goals, and prepare members for leadership roles through mentoring and coaching, ensuring the business thrives for generations to come. Hello, everyone. My name is Goldie, your co host for this episode.
And I'm Lakshan, your other co host for this episode. And this is episode 39 of Mind the Gen Gap podcast. We are in season 2 of this podcast. And in the spirit of this season, we'll be inviting interesting people with very interesting perspectives to share their expertise with us.
That's right. And today I'd like to introduce our guest, Sanjay Kanakya, a certified leadership, executive, and business coach based in Pune. With over 15 years of experience as a certified facilitator, Sanjay has been transforming the way individuals and teams approach leadership, communication, and management. But that's not all. Sanjay is also a second generation family business owner, bringing over 25 years of first hand experience to the table. He's been through the trenches, felt the highs and the lows, and knows exactly what it takes to build, sustain, and grow a successful family business. Now, this unique blend of experiences is what sets Sanjay apart. And we are so excited to learn from him, especially on how coaching can transform multi-generational family businesses. Whether you're an aspiring leader or a seasoned family business member, Sanjay's insights will inspire you to design the life and business you deserve. Let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Sanjay. How are you today?
Thank you. Thank you, Goldie, and thank you, Lakshan, for having me here. I'm feeling very excited and privileged to be on your 39th episode of this amazing Mind the Gen Gap podcast. So glad to be here.
Lovely. And we're happy to have you here. It's been long coming. um,
That's good.
yeah. So, obviously, I introduced you with the two hats that you wear. And I think that brings us very neatly into my first question. Given that your family businesses has, almost crossed nearly 3 generations, with your father being the founding figure and then your older brother continuing it, and now you are next in line alongside your own pivot into coaching, how do you maintain that balance between your family business and your coaching career?
That's a very interesting question, Goldie. And for I think we might have spoken about it earlier, but maybe Lakshan doesn't know that. Before I became a coach, I was purely a business owner myself for a good 25 years, and that's when I came across a business coach in Pune who kind of guided us, me and my brother and our company, into how do we structure and grow a business in a proper formal in a frameworked way, right? And that kind of is what I was a client of a business coach before I became a coach myself. And because we got a coach on board, we could get a lot of systems and process in place that not just generated money for us, but what it really gave me back was my time. And what I really wanted to do with my time, and for many years, for almost 2 decades before, I used to be a facilitator and a trainer within a an NGO and a social service organization, and I used to really be drawn towards this whole idea of coaching and facilitation. The moment I got some time back from my own business, I mean, I could have taken up golf. Sometimes I wonder that I should have done that, but I ventured into what was my passion, which was coaching, and then I got my certifications and all the things, credentials that I had to get done to become a professional coach. Uh, Being a client of a coach myself first taught me how to manage my business and my time better. And I realized that I was in a position where I saw a lot of my community friends who are also business owners who were struggling with their time management and how do they prioritize, how do they grow their business. Because, let's be clear, no family business person is taught how to run a business in an MBA school, right? MBAs probably teach you to go, become a part of a corporate or a big company. But in a small and medium scale business, proper structured way of running a business is never taught. And that's why a lot of us struggle. And once I understood the power of what a coach can do, I realized that I could share this with all my friends and community, then give them back the time that they truly deserve and the lifestyle that they truly want. That's where my purpose really came from, and I wanted to give it back. And that gives me the purpose to actually balance on a daily basis my family business as well as my passion for coaching. I hope that answers the question.
I mean, it's like, I think in a nutshell, I would put it, what you echo echoes back. And
Yes.
and truly, I think that's what I want to say. Of course, I resonate so much with this. No, Lakshan, I think you agree here. What's coming up for you, Lakshan, as you hear Sanjay speak?
Yeah, so this is, I mean, Sanjay mentioned that I may not know this. Sanjay, I've heard plenty about you from my dad. So this is something that I did know about you. Uh, and what you said about how MBAs don't teach family businesses how to run a family business. They teach their corporates or executives on how to continue to grow the company rather than to build it, right? The question that's coming up for me is, at what point does a business pivot from just a business to a family business? That's the question that's coming up for me.
Well, every business in itself, is run by somebody, right? Now, when you talk about what does it mean to be a family business, is when you have other members of your family also joining the business, as compared to you and your friend do a business together as partners. There is still I would say a dissociation, a disconnect that comes when out there. But when it's a family that is involved, relationships like your brother, your father, your son, whatever, then there are a lot of overlapping emotions, feelings, relationships, and business decisions that come in play. And therefore, there are different levels of challenges when you how do you maneuver that, right? For example, me and my brother are in the business together now for almost 25, 30 years. He is senior to me by 7 years in age. So despite we having different business personalities and what we do in our business in the decision making, there is still a level of a respect or a certain level of formality that you have to maintain from a younger brother perspective, or a sibling, or a father or son. So those dynamics also come in play. So that's kind of a gist of what it means to be a part of a family business as compared to just any business.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, Sanjay. Like, thoughts that were coming up for me, because I mean, I know Goldie as well is very familiar with the family business background. Um, I'll leave this question for later, but a thought that's coming up for me, which is basically about how you mentioned that there is this respect that you have with your elder brother. There's a 7-year age difference and all that. Uh, in today's day and age, the difference between siblings' ages is not quite that much, and they're a lot closer. Uh, and I presume the dynamic would be very different in terms of how each of them looks at each other in a family business setting as well. But I'll leave that question for later. Goldie, what was coming up for you as Sanjay was sharing this?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm essentially noticing is this extra layer that is developed as a consequence of having a family run business, because one of the big things that you mentioned was emotions. You can't avoid them, right? So like in regular coaching, leadership coaching, you work on certain areas of development that we're all familiar with because this is a space where, luckily, we speak the same language. Do you find, Sanjay, that there are any specific areas of development that come up a lot in your business coaching, sessions when it comes to cohorts of families, whether it's in a facilitation process or in a one-to-one? Um, what are the key areas that you see becoming like a pattern of improvement that people want to work on?
Um, some of the when you are talking about family businesses, specifically in the area that I work with, the SME business space, right? A lot of the common challenges across generations, whenever I meet any business owner, are the mindset that they come and approach their business with. Typically,
Mm,
the whole transition of delegating and ability to let go when everything has been with you, um, the ability to have a structured approach to running the business, and having systemized thinking. And most times business owners get stuck in operational and daily issues, and I kind of try to tell them that how do they take a step back and work more towards working on the business rather than in it all the time. Now this is the general stuff, but when you look at from age perspective, if I had to look at generations, because that's the theme of our podcast as well, um, the senior generation tends to have a challenge with delegation, of letting go of control, because a lot of times they have that emotional attachment with their business. It kind of almost becomes their identity, the business. And that, sometimes I joke with them that the biggest KPI that the seniors should have in their business is not about revenue, but it's more about learning how to let go while staying relevant.
yeah.
Yeah, and of course the younger generation, they are struggling to find their own, trying to lead the pack, so to say. One of the challenges that they have is being patient when they want to introduce change. This younger generation typically tends to be much more impatient than we were, and of course much more than our generation, earlier generations were, because there is so much of fast-paced, um, immediate response that they get from social media, from everything that they do. So they are used to a very fast pace, and therefore developing a sense of patience is required while introducing change in an organization. People management skills become much more crucial for the younger generation, because they tend to be really good individual contributors, but they tend to not like to work with teams. So people management skills also become very, very important. The next gen typically wants more freedom before they are ready for it, and my role is, how do I get them ready for it?
It's so fascinating because I've read about all this, and I've seen so many, I've done some research, and there's so many case studies you hear about. You're actually actively working with such scenarios, and I think it's a very delicate balance, right? But because you might be coaching like the whole family, perhaps, I don't know, but you have to be so careful with also like conflicts of interest, maybe, and boundaries,
Absolutely.
and right. And then, of course, this is a question I know that Lakshan should be leading here, but I can't help but ask: how importantly do you view boundaries when it comes to creating the rapport as a coach with them? And I suppose it's another area of development where you have to sort of separate the emotional and work from from the doing part, in this case, in the business. And as you said, a lot of the older leaders have this inability to let go because they hold on so tightly to what they have built. And I think a lot of that encompasses the word boundaries for me. How do you navigate that? Or maybe you have an example you'd like to share of a case study.
Well, I mean, you know when you really dig deep into a coaching conversation, and be it business owners, be it any generation, after all we are human beings, and as coaches we are kind of adept at peeling through the layers and really finding out what is at the core. And at the core, what I find is typically the fears that people have. If you're a senior citizen, a senior generation business owner, typically your fear comes from loss of control and being relevant anymore, because you've built something over 25, 30, 40 years of your life, and all of a sudden, there is somebody else who's taken center stage and running the show. And what does it mean to you in your own life? So addressing and understanding those fears. And then, of course, the younger generation is, all the movies are similar, like the Mufasa movie that's just come about, the Lion King. It's all about the young cub who's wanting to find his own, right? And that's the fear of not being relevant in this big legacy that their forefathers have created. So each is finding his own, and each is trying to stay relevant. Now, how do you normalize that in a coaching conversation? How do you make it okay to have this conversation as, what are my fears? What are my challenges? And sometimes a role of the coach is very important, or even somebody outside who's an advisor who's not from the family. They play the role of normalizing these crucial conversations and allow everybody to express what they're truly feeling. And that itself is takes away the charged up emotions that people have. I don't think conflict is a problem in business. Unspoken conflict or unresolved conflict becomes the challenge.
That's amazing. That's I love the way you
Yeah.
kind of, like, in a nutshell, you just brought so much of value. You packed in so much value. It was lovely listening to what you just shared. Yeah, Goldie, I think you were going to say something.
No, I was going to say the same. I'm echoing the same thoughts. But please, I know you have a question, so go for it.
Yeah, so this relevance piece came up quite strongly for me as you just shared this, Sanjay. One of the things that Goldie and I discuss very frequently is that all the generations want the same thing. It's just that they go about getting it differently, right? And relevance
Yeah,
seems to be
absolutely.
this big theme over here also. The older generations aren't, they find it difficult to let go because they want to stay relevant. The younger generations are like looking for their, like, time to shine, relevance over there,
Absolutely.
right?
And it's reflected in very, very small and subtle things. I have this one example I do share a lot of times, that when I joined my family business, I was 24-year old, right? My brother, who was just 7 years elder to me, when I say seven, just seven, he joined the business when he was 18, and I joined when I was 24. So he was already almost a generation, about 10, 11 years before I joined. He was already in the business, right? And then there was my father, who was also the one who founded the business about almost 25 years before that, right? So a very simple example that I felt, when I'm talking about this finding relevance, is that we have the security guard at our office, right? And these are these old Nepali guys who've been with us for 20, 25 years. Of course, he's no more, but back then he had already been here a decade or so, and he was used to giving salam to the big boss, which was my father and my brother. But I would come in, and he would not even say hello, because I was just this young cub who just joined. Who are you really? Have you really found your way? And and I continued to be a part of this business, and I saw him transition to a point where he started accepting me as one of those leaders of the organization. That, that has stood out in my own mind, that how do you perceive yourself through the way people look at you? And that's what we are all trying to search for, that as young generation, we want to be relevant, and we find relevance in people who accept us as a part of the leadership, or the, who are the founders or the family that owns the business. But still, the security guard doesn't recognize you for it. As simple as that.
Such a simple example
Very
that
subtle.
represents so much. No,
Absolutely.
I think at the core of what I'm hearing, a session where you are managing to navigate the intricacies of a family business has to start from life coaching. That's how I'm seeing it. Because if you don't life coach the individual, their leadership will not shine through in a place where there's already such a firm, cemented mindset. And let's not forget, like when your dad began, he was on his own. So there was nobody to tell him what to do. He, led the way on his own, that one, security guard did salam just to him until your brother came in. So that's impactful for him, I'm thinking, even as a leader who was his own boss of everything. And, to fall back on what? On just that, right? Because leadership essentially is very different in a multinational, a big organization, whereas it's very different if the business belongs to you. So I do want to like ask you that there's so many different styles of leadership that one hears and reads and talks about, and we take example from the famous from the many sort of General Motors to the Tatas. But I am curious to know, like, fundamentally in a family business, what is leadership,
Mhm.
Sanjay? Like, you're so good with your words. Tell us, what is leadership for you?
Um, Leadership kind of takes different phases across the age of the organization, is what I've seen. In the early
Mm,
stages of an organization, the leaders, typically, or the founder leaders, tend to be much more hands-on, and therefore they're used to getting, rolling up their sleeves and getting into the dirt and getting the work done. The command and control is all with them all the time, and therefore they take a very high personal involvement into whatever is happening and whatever is happening into the business, because they have started it. I have found that the risk taking ability of the founding leaders is much higher as compared to the following generations in the business, because they had nothing and therefore they had nothing to lose. Whereas with a mature business or the second and the third generation business leaders, I have found that decision making is much more collaborative, and therefore the pace of decision making is also much slower. Indecision also is indecisiveness is also very evident as compared to the founder leaders in the second or third generation leaders, that they tend to have this whole consideration about the legacy before they take a decision, that, oh, what if it goes wrong?
mm,
The fear of failure is much more evident in their decision making as well. So these are some of the differences that I do notice uh, when I'm working with different generations.
So it's like the founding generation operates from a, like as you said, nothing to lose, versus
Yeah,
the subsequent ones are like, don't screw up, don't screw up, don't screw up. That's the mindset in which they operate.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I would not say it's 100%, but I see it more evident because it's a responsibility that you've taken, right? And therefore, you want to really do well with it. And the overriding factor is, I don't want to drop it.
yeah.
I don't want to drop the ball. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the overriding emotion.
So, Sanjay, we've spoken quite a bit about various elements of family businesses and multi-generation family businesses. If a family business were to come to you and say, "Hey, we want you to coach us," what is the process like working with you from start to finish?
The process of working with me, it again depends on the kind of generations that are coming to me. Now I'm assuming that because you're asking me from Gen Gap podcast that you're coming from, you are assuming that there's a generation or two they're coming together to work with me, right? Because I do have clients who are just single owner who can also work with me and don't have multi-generational challenges. But let's assume that you're talking to me about a father and son duo that would come and want to work with me. One of the in fact, it's one of the case studies as well that I look at as one of my favorite coaching clients, so to say, where the father and son duo. The son, of course, approached me, and then I was told that the father is also a part of actively involved in the business, and so we were to coach them together. And a lot of times when the initial conversations were happening, there was conversation about growth, but I would hear the son say something different and the father would say something different. uh, Now it would not sound different to them because they would talk about growth, and I'm like, here you have two different approaches to what we're talking about. uh, and let me give you the case study itself, that they are from a good trading business, and the father was wanting to expand their entire trading portfolio into more products, and that's what he thought growth could be. Whereas the son, who comes from this new generation, looked at the whole impact of digital marketing and social media, and he wanted to grow geographies. Like, let's keep the product range same, but let's grow geography. And the father was approaching it from, let's increase the product range, but the geography that we work in remains the same. And they were kind of trying to figure out what's the best way. And I had to just normalize and say, okay, why are you looking at it from the either or perspective? Why can't it be and? And that's when they're like, okay, and that's when they could each share their own idea about growth and how they could continue to think about it. Because before I came in, you know if the father was wanting to talk about something, the son would shut him off, saying that no, 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 that's not the way. And if the son was trying to say about what he thought, and the father would not be actively listening. So both were kind of at, not, I would not say loggerheads, but at kind of at a standstill. We're not moving ahead because they just didn't know how. And just me being in this conversation kind of eased them into, all right, let's try both within given norms. Why don't you try this? Why don't you try this? And let's see, and let's get back in a month and two. Let's have a structured framework to doing this, and let's see how we can, what results are we getting, and then rely on data and not so much of who owns the decision. So let's be clear that sometimes your data might say that this strategy worked better. Just because it was a father's strategy doesn't make the son any less important. It is just a strategy that worked. So removing the emotions out of who made the decision as to what was the decision and based on data. So these are some of the things that as a coach or an external advisor, you come in and you can kind of normalize it and help them structure their thought process better. And I didn't complete the question, Lakshan. But initially, so the initial part is understanding what the vision is from each of the perspectives, and then getting a clarity of that, then understanding the strategies that we need to do for implementation of these individual viewpoints, and third is holding them accountable mainly to getting the work done. Because a lot of times business owners who are independently working have nobody to hold them accountable to their own goals and their own vision. So as a coach, accountability also plays a very important role. So when they work with me, these are some of the things, as through an example as I shared with you: vision clarity, how do you implement the strategies, and then how do you hold accountable to getting it done.
Thank you for that. I think in every answer that you've given us, I noticed there are so many nuanced approaches to a situation where families are involved. And I think this is where at this point I'd like to do a little fun segment, which is demystifying certain statements that have held so much weight, or if they continue to be true. Only you will tell us this, Sanjay. We call it the common myths, whether it's a yes or a no. We like to talk about these myths because I think every expert brings so much for us to learn from them. But then there's also a lot of standardized statements that people are left sort of, either holding on as values. And because we are a generational podcast, our main objective is always to break down those myths so that different generations can come together and work together. So we're gonna take turns, Lakshan and I, by throwing a few of these myths out to you. And what we'd like you to tell us, firstly, is whether yes or no to the statement, and a why. Just back up your answer, okay, to the yes or the no.
All right.
Okay, so I'm going to go first. Mine is a statement that I've heard often, especially in the movies. The first generation builds, the second maintains, and the third destroys.
Okay, I'm the third generation in my business. Now I don't know how to answer, how to answer that. No, but jokes apart, I think it's a myth. More from destruction is not inevitable. It's with the right coaching, governance, preparation, structured approach. I think the generations can build upon what the other generations prior have built on, and continue to grow. And we see that as an example of a lot of these big corporates who are multi generational family businesses as well. And they've done it successfully. But it's only that, when you keep having a structured communication channel from generation to generation, and you pass on the values and business ethic, I think it's not necessary. It's when the communication breaks down, typically, that's when you see all of this happening. So I think it's a myth.
Cool. Well, my turn. Second
Yeah.
one,
Okay.
Sanjay. Um, Younger members of the family automatically feel entitled to leadership roles without needing to prove themselves. Is that a yes or a no?
Younger members feel entitled to become leaders. I think partly it is true. Entitlement tendency does exist, but it's often driven by lack of structured leadership development and unclear succession processes. Uh, Proper coaching and proper mentoring and can shift them from entitlement to really earned leadership.
That's
I
very
like
good.
I like the term earned leadership. I really like the term. It's a nice term.
Okay, I'm going to go next. Um, this is about resistance to change. So, family businesses are often thought to be more resistant to change and innovation and clinging to traditional ways of operation.
That I would say is a fact, but I think it's a fact because of what we talked about, right? The founders and the people who started the businesses tend to protect what they built, and because not just about the business, it's also the identity that they've built about themselves around their business, right? But with generational collaboration, more in family businesses can balance stability with smart innovation, as long as we said, we control the experimentation, allow for the newer generation to test the ideas, give them a sandbox to play in, and figure out what's the next step for the family business to grow in. And that's though it is a fact, I think it is shifting with people now getting more and more in the information age where there is so much more knowledge available. I think the older generation also is now accepting that yes, we need to shift. And of course, there are the business pressures that come from the environment as well, right? Now
Yeah,
there is so much of cutthroat competition that if you are not relevant in the market anymore, the market tells you to move out.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. That's very true.
Classic Nokias and Blackberries are the
Yeah.
uh, evidence to that. Yeah. So.
Hmm.
Yeah, Goldie, you got to say something.
No, it's your turn. So please go for the next myth.
Okay. Um, Family businesses are less formal than non-family businesses. Yes or no?
For family businesses are
Less
less formal.
formal. Yeah.
What do you mean by formal, though? I mean, if you had to define what formal means.
In the sense that there are like traditional companies, structures and processes, and things being put in a particular way. Uh, that family businesses, there is a lot more leeway. It's little more casual because it is family, it is relationships, uh, making it less formal than non-traditional. Uh,
Okay. That's what you mean by formal. So yeah,
yeah.
I would say that is a fact to a certain extent. That's because there is a huge overlap of family ownership, management, and the whole khichdi that comes with it when it is unstructured. Family businesses can be professional and very formal if they structure it in a proper way, and then of course they'll become much more resilient as well. But when the focus is on building systems and processes and governance, and that's the importance of what we as coaches do, or what mentors and consultants can play a role as well, because that is the key when you're able to separate ownership and management, family, that those are the dynamics that you have to learn to kind of discern and move out of while you're working in that environment.
I mean, I think there's so much there that you've unpacked today for us in these myths alone that, they sound so simple and they're so directed and often loosely thrown out, but there's so much behind there that needs to be addressed alone. And that could be essentially so much that comes inside a coaching session, I feel. Uh,
Absolutely.
uh, just I have one more, but I'm hearing basically what you say a lot here, Sanjay, is these myths have come as a consequence of not addressing the issues over a long period of time, and
Absolutely.
therefore they were normalized to a point where perhaps those businesses sadly had to close down because these issues, or as we call them myths and we take them so lightly today, should have been addressed. And that would have been the success of the longevity, which was otherwise compromised. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So the last one that we have is there an assumption that the experienced family members have more experience in the key decision making skills, overshadowing the younger members?
Again, so this is again a challenge that Lakshana was talking to you about as well earlier, is that when you are kind of overlapping family relationships and business decisions, when you conduct a business meeting at the dining table, that's typically what's going to happen. But and therefore, what needs to typically happen is that you keep your relationships and the family values or as separate from the conversation, and come to a management meeting where everybody has an equal say, and you come from data driven decisions and not so much of emotions. So experience can bring wisdom but not always relevance. Sometimes younger generations often bring fresh perspectives, and their understanding and adaptability to technology is so much more valuable in this day and age, that the older generation, though out of respect, is deferred to for decision making. The older generation would be wise to say that, I don't have the bandwidth or the technical know-how to give a decision, and therefore I leave the decision to you. But that is also the wisdom that a older generation needs to understand of their limits, where they don't understand that better, and to say that, yes, I don't know.
So this reminds me, Sanjay, of there is this family that I know, fairly close, very close to, in fact. The dad is someone who started a business of his own, and the son is a part of that. And what I remember, what I noticed a lot is that anytime the son would bring up any, what do you say, ideas, any talking points, ideas, the dad would kind of like shut it down, saying, "No, son, like this is not how it is. It's not. You're not saying it's not. It's not right, basically, right?" And I would be sat in some of these conversations that are happening. Sometimes I would think, well, yeah, the son doesn't really make sense. But other times I'll be thinking, hey, the son makes a lot of sense. I feel like his point makes a lot of sense. I may have no context about the business or nothing, but I just somehow got a sense that what the son was saying should have been more strongly considered without just being shut down like that. When you were saying this, it came up for me, and like a thought that's coming up for me is when this thing constantly happens, something like this veto thing is so common, without it being say data backed, as you said, the next generation kind of loses interest in taking part of being a
Absolutely.
part of these businesses, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you refer to are some of these biases as well. That the father-son case study that I was talking to you about. That both of them have had prior childhood experiences that they brought to their relationship when they were trying to run the business. So, for example, the father that you mentioned over here, who would shut his son down now, was also shut down when he was a child by his father. And those unprocessed understanding of what the role of the father is, or what the senior person in the business is, were kind of not helping the business grow. And the same thing with the child as well, that in his childhood, in school days, that when he had a very strict father who was kind of controlling all the time, most times if a father even had a good suggestion, the son would just rebel because that's what was ingrained as an ingrained behavior. So when I observed all of this, when they were not saying stuff, I what I did was I started meeting them separately and giving them space to express what they're thinking, what they're feeling. And I would help them process their thoughts that, okay, is this really valid to shoot down your son's idea? Or is it you playing out of your fears or your misunderstandings or your perceptions? And questioning that helped him understand that, okay, maybe I should give my son a better hearing, or let me be a little bit more not so rebellious to my father's ideas. So and that's one of those case studies which I look back at as one of most satisfying for me, because some of these case studies in business coaching dynamics are not so much of, did the revenue grow as much as not, or did there was much better peace and harmony within the family, was there more alignment, was the relationship stronger? And those also matter a lot, and that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this as well.
So true. I think in solid leadership, the relational dynamics are the sort of the cornerstone of good leadership, right? And what you said about shutting down the sun. What's essentially happening there, as I see it from the outside, is it's stunting the potential of the leadership of the next generation in this case, or the son, as we speak in the case study. And I have a last question for you, which is inspired by a show that I hope you have watched it or at least heard of it. Succession. Are we all familiar?
Uh-huh.
I've
Yeah.
heard of it. I've heard it's a very
Yeah.
good show. I've not watched it yet.
Yeah. So the reason I bring it up is obviously it's fictional, but I do believe that it's so relevant to our conversation in the same way that you could build an empire and it could, fail completely. But what happens when you have built a solid empire based on the leadership of one powerful figure who has probably not enabled the team, in this case the upcoming family members, to actually then look after this huge empire, which is what happens in Succession. It's about a family business that's delivering generational power struggles through and through the entire TV show. And so what happens when the weight of an inherited empire ignites a lot of other problems like ruthlessness, betrayal, high stakes for control. And of course, like I said, it's fiction, obviously, so there's a lot of drama and spice in it. But, Sanjay, if you were to coach the people of Succession,
I would charge a
what
lot of money.
what you would charge? Yes, well, we're giving you a solid client here. you know I like where this is going. What would be the very first steps you would take in your engagement process with them?
No, I mean, I think I saw the first season about a year ago, so I have blurred memory of all of that. But it was very
Yeah.
entertaining for sure. What really stuck out is, and what been talking about, right? The kind of a complete chaos and confusion between what is the family values, family relationships, as compared to what is the ownership in the business, and what everybody gets out of the business, what is each and every person's equity, and then who leads the business, who's going to manage the day-to-day operations. And in that show particularly, they kind of try to show that the person who's leading the business is going to be the person who operationally manages the whole thing, and therefore has the maximum ownership in the business. And which need not be the truth, because if you can separate out the family, the relationship, the values of the family in a different conversation, and bring in a different conversation about what is the ownership of each and every person in that particular business or the wealth of the family, and then who is the most capable leader to lead the day-to-day operations, and is of course compensated for leading and doing that work as well, right? So separating these three would be very, very important. The challenge in the story is not so much of the lack of business, it's the lack of trust. And power is the currency in that, right? Because they want power at any cost. So, uh, if I had to really coach them, it would be more about understanding each person's expectations and needs and wants, and how do you separate that from running the business and leaving it to the most capable person to run that. Sure.
Wonderful. We're definitely hiring you.
Now you've just told me how do I change my target audience and think big.
Amongst other things that we do here is give you the opportunity to expand yourself. Oh,
Great.
thank you for that. Lakshan, would you like to say anything before we have to come to a close now
Yeah, yeah,
soon?
yeah, yeah. If so, Sanjay, if there was one piece of advice you would like to give to someone from the older generation and someone from the younger generation, whether it be in the business space or just in general, what would that be?
From a leadership perspective, one of the key things I would say is plan your um leadership transition in advance and not wait for the crisis to come. A lot of times, the person who holds the reins for many, many years and everybody's around him, depending on him to continue, age does catch up. Health does catch up. Accidents can happen. And then all of a sudden this entire support system that was kind of based on what you were doing completely collapses. So leadership is always a work in progress, and that's what we see from corporates, right? There is always a CEO who's now getting groomed for succession, or on a professional level, or somebody from the outside who's brought in. So leadership should always be a work in progress, and you have to keep building the pipeline for that. Secondly, have a very structured approach with a clarity of roles and responsibilities for each and every person. So you have a proper defined organizational structure with responsibilities and roles defined. And one of the important things, as we talked about, separating the family from the ownership and the management part of it. Some of the key things that come to my mind when you look at uh, how do you plan for a great multi-generational business that keeps growing.
Those were super helpful. I mean, especially the one on separation of ownership and management. I think that's really been a pivotal changing, like learning for me today, at least. So, as much as I'd love to continue this conversation, because honestly, I've had so much fun, and I want to thank you for being here, Sanjay, with us and giving us your time and teaching us so many things, and also adding so much humor to the conversation, because there's nothing like a conversation that runs dry, but this has been anything but that. um, and
Appreciate.
yeah, and with that, we have come to the end of episode 39 of Mind the Gen Gap podcast. I have been your co-host, Goldie.
And I have been your other co-host, Lakshan. Thank you so much for listening, watching, and tuning in all the way to the very end.
And I
Muchas
thank you
gracias.
both for the opportunity to be here and share some thoughts. And you guys are doing an awesome job. I wish you all the best as your Mind the Gen Gap continues to grow. All the
Thank you.
best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll see you all in the next one. Hasta pronto.
Bye.